Nathan said we are launching two reports. One is multiple pathways to sustainable development, further evidence of sustainability in practice, and there are copies at the entrance. I will start with this report before I talk about the second one. This report is a sequel to another report we published last year. It's also called Multiple Pathways to Sustainable Development, Initial Findings from the Global South. Both reports are responses to, first of all, the Governing Council decision 2013 calling upon the UNEP Executive Director to collect information on national approaches, national pathways to sustainable development, and share that information among member states, as well as last UNEA resolution on the same. So after we published the initial report in 2015, and in response to the last UNEA resolution on multiple pathways, we made this new report. And in this new report, we covered 4 national pathways. First one being the circular economy in Germany, and as well as in the European Union at large. The second approach is natural capital accounting. Natural capital accounting in Botswana. And the third one is the payments for ecosystem services in Costa Rica. And finally, we have looked at the gross national happiness in the Kingdom of Bhutan. Now, let me briefly describe what we have done in this particular report. The circular economy is really an effort to minimize the waste from production and consumption, and in order to avoid the use of virgin materials, and then try to encourage a sustainable way of life. And we found Germany being a champion, a leader in the European Union in implementing this particular approach. Natural capital accounting is really an effort to capture the value of natural resources which are typically undervalued in marketplace in our day-to-day economic decisions. And by incorporating the value of natural capital in economic policy making, we hope that that type of information will help inform decision making and to ensure more sustainable use of natural resources. Now, payments for ecosystem services is really an instrument that transfer the value of ecosystem services from the beneficiaries of these services to the communities that take care of ecosystems. And we found Costa Rica to be one of the earliest practitioners or implementers of this particular instrument. Now, in Bhutan, they have implemented a very unique approach to measure well-being that is called gross national happiness. And the key idea is to make sure that our economic well-being is not measured only by indicators such as GDP. We would like to look at non-material aspects of well-being, including, in the particular case of Bhutan, including the spiritual, the psychological, spiritual well-being of people. So these are some of the approaches we have covered in this latest publication. And we are very happy to present this publication today to you. Now, the second report we are launching here today has a focus on China, on China's ecological civilization approach to sustainability. And we have both the Chinese version here as well as the English version. And these reports are also available at the entrance. And the Chinese ecological civilization approach to sustainability is basically trying to ensure that ecological considerations are integrated in major aspects of our life, including the economic aspects, the political aspects, the culture aspects, as well as the social aspects of our day-to-day life, to ensure the centrality of ecological considerations in our way of life. And specifically, the ecological civilization approach tries to look at how, for example, we make sustainable use of our land space. How do we increase resource efficiency? And how do we improve environmental ecological quality, the quality of the environment? Right? And also, how do we ensure the sustainable lifestyle, and also the institutions that can guarantee the sustainable development, okay? So this is, in a nutshell, the gist of these two publications. And I'm here with the lead author also of the China report, the Ecological Civilization report, Green is Gold. And we are happy to respond to questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fulai. Actually, before I get into questions, which might then take us down some interesting paths, I've just been informed that His Excellency the Minister and our Executive Director are on their way. They've just wrapped up in the hall. So if you will just bear with us for 2 minutes, and here they are. We will be able to welcome them to the Welcome, Excellency. Welcome, Mr. Executive Director. We appreciate you've had a heated and extended session. Thank you very much for joining us here today for this press conference. And I appreciate also that you will have to be excused early, as well as another engagement awaits. We've just introduced the fact that we are today launching two key reports. We've had an introduction to those reports from Fulai, and it is now my great pleasure to welcome, in the first instance, Achim Steiner, Executive Director of UNEP, Under Secretary General of the United Nations, for his remarks.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Colleagues, apologies. I know you are patient, but we today really lost control over time, but we are trying to catch up again. And I want to first of all welcome my dear colleague and friend, Minister Cheng, who is in fact the first time here in Nairobi. And so, as we say in Kenya, karibu sana, Minister. Welcome to the environment capital of the world, as we like to say. I will just make very brief remarks because it is really the Minister and then afterwards my colleagues who will present to you. What we're doing here is to share with you some of the outcomes of a governing council, or UNEA decision rather, both actually, that called upon UNEP to go out into the world and look at the different pathways that nations were choosing in order to address this broader agenda of sustainable development. Now, as journalists, if you write an article about, looking for pathways on sustainable development, your editors will probably say, thank you very much. So let me tell you, what you will hear in a moment is actually something that is unprecedented in history. What we have tried to put a spotlight on by looking at some of the work that is happening in China today in terms of policy reform and transformation, alongside some of the other case studies that are also being presented, is truly pioneering. Conceptually, China has in its new 5-year plan committed itself to moving towards an ecological civilization. Now, in our international community, we have, moving towards circular economy, sustainable development, green economy. When we veer in some of the South American countries, UNEP's whole objective is to capture the variety of approaches and to understand what makes them promising in terms of a nation's own ambitions, and also very interesting from countries who wish to study what is happening. I think, Mr. Cheng, you have probably, in some ways, the most unenviable portfolio, because to you, the Minister of Environment in China, over 1 billion Chinese look to solve problems, and then another 6 billion look to you to see if you can solve that problem, because it may actually hold the answer for many other countries. So don't feel the pressure. But what I would simply like to say is that UNEP and the People's Republic of China have a remarkably close and intense working relationship. We truly learn from one another, and we truly believe that what happens in China over the next decade will in part define also where our sustainability curve of change is likely to take us over the period to 2030. And this is as much about what happens in China as, in a sense, innovation that happens beyond China. And I end with a simple example that to me resonates so very truly here in Nairobi and in Kenya. It is when China chose to embark on a mass-scale expansion of renewable energy, building of its own energy transition need, that it created the economies of scale for renewable energy technology that has allowed us to literally transform a world market where solar energy, wind technology today are available sometimes at less than 60–70% of the cost than even a decade or a decade and a half ago. So in that sense, domestically as much as internationally, it is highly important to learn, appreciate, and follow what you are trying to do in China. Minister, thank you again for being here. And Nathan, may I hand the floor straight to the Minister?
Absolutely, and only to again warmly welcome His Excellency Chen Jining, Minister of Environmental Protection of the People's Republic of China.
Your Honor, Executive Director, friends from media, ladies and gentlemen. First, on behalf of the Ministry of Environmental Protection of China, I would like to congratulate on the launch of the 2 monographs. I would also like to take this opportunity to express my enormous thanks to you and the UNEP for your support over the years to China's environmental protection and sustainable development. A harmonious coexistence of human and nature is one of the most daunting challenges we are facing today. Yet, historically, we humans have the gene of fostering not only nature-friendly philosophy and life attitude, but also the ecological wisdom to work well with nature. Let me here tell you 2 old stories about what our Chinese believe and have done in the past. In about 200 BC, there was a well-known book in China called 吕氏春秋, 吕 Spring and Autumn Annals. The book tells us one can neither drain a pond to catch fish, nor burn down the woods to hunt animals. A classic statement that our exploitation could not be sustainable. Again, 2,000 years ago, China built the world's oldest water project, the Dujiangyan irrigation system. It's not a dam, it's not a reservoir, as what we have widely seen today for fighting water shortages. Instead, it fully relies on and complies with local hydrological nature to divide the river by a long bank in the middle. Then the deep and the narrow inner stream serve for irrigation, and the shallow wide outstream for flood and waterway. It's beautifully preserved the ecological and water flows of the rivers, as well as the natural flow between underground water and the surface water. Most importantly, it still works perfectly today. Learning from past and from others' experience and lessons is a wisdom of human being. I believe that's also the point of today's event. Chinese government attaches great importance to ecological civilization. Environmental protection and resource conservation has been a basic national policy. Since the 18th CPC National Congress, ecological civilization has been considerably accelerated in China and progress has been made. This is much a tribute to President Xi Jinping, who has repeatedly emphasized clean water and green mountains are as valuable as the mountains of gold and silver. And to protect the ecological environment is to preserve our productivity. And a sound ecological environment means great productivity. His vision and diversion provokes wide and strong actions in China for fighting pollution, initiating fundamental green institutional reform, developing efficient environmental governance and ecological conservation. Here I would like to thank Mr. Shen Fulai and his team for their efforts in summarizing China's experience over the years in promoting ecological civilization. Hereunder, I would like to share some of my thoughts about this. First, China's ecological civilization highlights the in-depth integration of environment protection into the overall economic, political, social, and cultural development process, which we call the 5-in-1 overall strategy. Environment is not only an essential element, but also the ultimate goal of development. Taking sustainable development and harmony between man and nature as a central goal, ecological civilization intends to integrate the idea of green development in various social aspects, including business growth and urban development. In short, each and every aspect of life and production has to go green. Second, China's ecological civilization emphasizes institutional innovation of both of government and the market. China's new environmental protection law makes it clear the local governments are fully responsible for their own environmental quality, which their jurisdiction. This leads to the development of a number of institutional arrangements in China, including integrating environment assessment into the performance evaluation system of local officials, a regular supervision and inspection on the performance of officials in fulfilling their environmental duties. Government officials will be lifelong accountable if environmental were damaged during their political tenure. Well, as far as market is concerned, a property right system for natural resources is under development. The same is also on the way for paid use system of natural resources as well as ecological compensation. Continued efforts will go further into improving market system for pollution control and ecological conservation. Third, China's ecological civilization calls for a better environmental infrastructure. Here, let me give you a few facts. China has so far established the largest air quality monitoring network in the developing world. China ranks top among the world in terms of sewage treatment capacity. China's ratio of nature reserve areas to land area is 15%, above the world average. With intensive efforts to apply ultra-low emission retrofitting to coal-fired generation unit, China is expected to have the world's largest clean and highly efficient coal-fired power generation industry. It's true, a better environmental infrastructure is essential for the improvement of environmental quality, while economic is under rapid development. Fourth, China's ecological civilization encourages broad social participation and a change towards green lifestyle. Diligence and frugality has been a valued Chinese tradition. We truly believe if there is not a change towards green consumption of life of the public, if there is not a wide ecological awareness, if ecological civilization is not part of our culture and the values, they could never be a sustainable development. Dear guests, China is drawing upon international experience in pursuit of ecological civilization. I also highly appreciate the report of multiple pathways to sustainable development, which highlights the experience of 4 other countries. I found they are truly enlightening. Finally, let me conclude by saying that China is willing to join hands with the international community to explore a successful development paradigm, a paradigm that will be globally sustainable, a paradigm that would deliver benefit to the well-being of our generation and the future generation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister, and I appreciate that you are both pressed very much for time. If I may impose on you, just for the cameras at least, we launched a report with one photograph very quickly.
You have a set there? Do we do both of them?
Chinese version.
Okay,
Right.
right. That's a Chinese, very good, yes.
Yes, good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you, Executive Director. I see that you are being called out, summoned to your next event. We do have, of course, the time to continue. I have already introduced Shengfu Lai to you. Also on the dais today is one of the lead authors of the report, Dr. Yu Hai, Director of the Policy Research Center of the Ministry of Environmental Protection of China. So 2 very knowledgeable colleagues, and I am delighted to now open it to questions and answers. Did we lose Stephen? Is Stephen still in the room? We also have Stephen Stone. Do you want to join the question session as well? It would be wonderful. I see that he's in the room. Stephen Stone is chief of the Economy and Trade branch of the Division of Technology, Industry and Economics, and also quite immersed in these reports today. Carmen, I saw your hand. I see a hand here as a second. There's the third there, if I haven't missed. So let's take these 3 questions maybe to begin.
What triggers this real intense, I think, effort from, at least from the outside that it looks like. And I'll add the fact that I was here at the last UNEA. It was actually a little bit difficult.
Let's take a couple of questions together, maybe.
Good afternoon. My name is Carla Sanchez. I'm coming from Mexico, but we broadcast to all over the world in Spanish. What's the role that will play Africa in the relation with the environmental politics of China, and how Africa and China as partners in industrialization, development, and ecological politics could make a new path for not repeating the mistakes of we committed in the past.
Okay, my name is Anna Rita. I'm from KUTV. I wanted to ask, China is leading industrialization, and here we are talking about green is gold, high carbon emissions, talk of the Montreal Protocol, the Kyoto Protocol. Does that mean that the road or the pathways to sustainable development, China is going to sign the Kyoto Protocol?
Thank you very much. Let me turn to the panel for these three questions. Who might want to start?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, friends. Thank you very much. So I'm so great. It's my great pleasure for me to come to UNEP and sit here and to introduce China's ecological civilization and share the knowledge and experience of China's ecological civilization. I'm so happy to answer your response to your questions. So for the first question, so all of us know that in the past decades, China got high speed green economic growth, but also in the meanwhile, China also suffered from the heavy environmental degradation and the environmental ecosystem, biodiversity loss, so something like that. So you ask me what really triggers, this change from the past, the model or paradigm to the ecological civilization. I think just one important reason is that the China's top leaders realized that this kind of model and paradigm is not sustainable. It cannot, sustainable in the future. So we have to change. That's the first one. The second one, the Chinese people also, need the high quality life quality, so something like that. So from the social perspective, from the people also have this kind of demand to improve, the environmental the quality. So I think, from the top, Chinese government has, political, the willingness and the commitment. So from the social perspective, the people have this kind of demand. So I think these two, how can I say, dimension drive this kind of change. Another important reason, so in the past, China at in the low, how can I say, segment of the global economic chain. So now China would like to promote or enhance its own economic competitiveness. So they have to change, to the more green model or paradigm. So that is why what triggers China's change to adopt the strategy of ecological civilization. So I think that is first one, my answer. For the second one, you asked me the China and Africa, the partnership. Frankly speaking, it's not my it is not my expertise. But I have to my own understanding, I can answer a little. So yeah, in the past decades, Africa, continent suffered from this kind of the old development model. So in the future, the Chinese government, how can I say, in the cooperation between China and the Africa countries, we will try to avoid the past, the behavior. So I can give you an example. For instance, the Belt and Road Strategy. Now Chinese government has formulated the guideline, the strategy, and to promote, to greening the Belt and the Road Strategy. That means if, Chinese company, the business sector to invest in the African countries, so the government will request its company or business sectors to try to, how can I say, follow up, the clean, the green the standards or criteria in the foreign investment. So that is, I also hope that that will be implemented well in the reality, in the practice. So I also think in the future, the China-Africa countries in cooperation will have the green in the future. Thank you. For third one, for the Kyoto, I think this question, my colleague Sheng Fulai could help me to answer the question.
Sure, just a short one. Yeah. So I think it's an excellent question, and you're saying basically how do we avoid pitfalls from before, particularly in the case of Africa. And what I see in these two reports that's really noteworthy is leadership. I see a vision that's coming from China, and they call it ecological civilization. And the point today, I think, of multiple pathways is you can call it green economy, green growth is very popular in Europe, circular economy. Thailand calls it sufficiency economy. But everyone is working on directions for creating wealth and economic growth without destroying the environment. And that's the very interesting thing. And I think Africa actually has a lot to offer in this regard as well. I think there's a lot of leadership in Africa as well. And it's really about learning from our mistakes in the past. So I think we have a lot to learn from China. And my also opinion is China has really been putting its money where its mouth is, because now China is supporting as an international, big international player in UNEP and other places, this drive towards sustainability. So some broad comments, and I don't know, Fulai, if you want to elaborate on that at all.
Just to perhaps add a few more comments to the questions that we're discussing here. I think in the case of China, how come the country has determined to has made up its mind to really switch its development model. Apart from the very good drivers mentioned by my colleague Yuhai, I think one other thing is the environmental condition is really getting into a very worrying extent, let's say, to put it mildly, right? And in particular, air pollution is already causing lots of concerns. So that explains the popular demand for improving environmental conditions. Another major factor, I think, is implied by Yuhai's response is really the economic opportunities by switching the development model. Economic opportunities in terms of new markets, new products, new businesses, and new profits that come with this shift. For example, China's environmental industry in the last 5 years has been growing on average between 15% to 20% annually. And it now accounts for 6.5% of the country's GDP, okay, which is quite significant, right? So this is really to explain why, not only in China, but perhaps in other countries as well, there is this movement, there is this voluntary willingness to really shift, to switch their development model towards a more sustainable pathway. And now, as far as China and Africa, I think from what I know, there is already major investments in clean technologies, including some related efforts in this country, in Kenya. China and the African countries, they are joining hands in sort of promoting clean technologies, in the deployment of clean technologies, in the local production of technological equipments and products here in the continent. So I think the sort of the stereotype of China only is interested in extracting natural resources in the continent, I think it needs to be demystified, because things are evolving very rapidly. And then in terms of China's international commitments, I think China has played a very active role in the Paris Agreement, and is also among the first batch of countries signing the Paris Agreement and other international agreements. Okay.
Sorry. We I think everybody in this room has kind of at least had a chance to view the report.
about what China plans to do. First of all, what has been going on, and also future emissions controls and so forth that you plan to implement. You know, I'm wondering if there's any longer-term goals that that we're not that you haven't mentioned so far, like maybe more investments in public transportation and those kinds of things that certainly locally in China would assist in making it so Beijing, you know, isn't quite so. You can actually see a little farther in Beijing, shall we say, and any things like, if there's anything like that.
Okay, so thank you for this question. So I think for this question, so here we have, you know, our friend, you know, my colleague from the Beijing Environmental Protection Bureau. And I remember that yesterday or the day before yesterday, the Beijing Environmental Protection Bureau have, you know, launched another report, the Beijing Air Pollution Control. So I guess, you know, for this question, maybe my colleague could, in Beijing could answer you. So frankly speaking, I have no the data for in this field. So if possible, so maybe after the meeting, I could give you some the details. So if possible, my colleague in Beijing could answer this question.
Yeah, I think I think beyond Beijing, perhaps look at China broadly. I think public transport has always been a very major focus for investment. I think as some of us will probably know, China's railway system is probably the most significant internationally in terms of the length of the railway connection. And this technology is now actually being applied overseas, outside of China, because more and more countries really are getting interested in the way China has, you know, been promoting the railway system as a major mode of transport, which is environmentally much more friendlier than, for example, the usual road transport, for example. And now, this particular part of the investment in this area, I think it is very much reflected in the 5-year plan, in the 13th 5-year plan, even though I do not have the figure to give you right now. Another one that I do have the figure for from this report, Gold is Green, is that between 2011 and 2015, over 4 years' time, China's energy efficient vehicles, the number of energy efficient vehicles had grown by 45 times in 4 years. Energy efficient vehicles. Of course, that's not exactly public transport, but certainly it could contribute to reduced carbon emissions.
One last thing, which is the whole concept, as the minister mentioned, the concept of ecological infrastructure. So where I see China investing is not just in traditional public infrastructure, but actually it's ecological infrastructure. And that's a change of thinking. It's a new paradigm shift that I think is radically important, because we tend to take our ecological infrastructure for granted. And I think what China is saying, we don't do that anymore. Thanks.
Thank you. And I think we heard a lot more sort of about air pollution and some of the practices coming out of China a couple days ago when we were launching the air pollution report. Carla, back to you. Okay. Or
just last question. It's just kind of like a perspective in 20, 30 years. How do you see as scientists and politicians the challenge of the emerging middle consumer class, both in China and in Africa, with its demands of manufacture and products and plastics? How to set up these politics with an unbeatable growth of the middle class population?
Okay. Thank you very much. I think in 20, 30 years' time, we certainly, for us in UNEP, we are optimistic, because we are optimistic because we believe people's awareness is increasing over time, right? Our awareness of environmental challenges as well as opportunities today are much more enlightened than 20, 30 years ago, right? So I think we have reason to hope that as the developing world is seeing the growing middle class, the new consumer class, right? And aspiring for better quality of life, better standards of living, at the same time, there will be an appreciation of what really constitutes a quality of life. Whether having 5 iPads represent a quality of life, or whether, let's say, you have a nice living environment with a lot of greeneries where kids can play safely, whether those kind of things represent more the sort of quality of life that people should aspire. So that is my sort of hope that in the next 20 years, as people's appreciation of quality of life, as in the case of Bhutan, which measures the gross national happiness, including spiritual happiness, I think more and more people in this world, including the middle class, the consumer class in the developing world, they will appreciate non-material well-being, and we will see a world in which people attach great importance to, for example, to reading, to poems, to the spiritual aspects of life beyond accumulating more and more material well-being. Okay. Yeah.
So I would like to add, some points. So, yeah, it's true that, with the income growth, economic growth, the Chinese people, the lifestyle and the consumption style is changing, and there's more food and more other, the consumption bring the higher pressure on energy, on the land, on the water, and the environment. So that is reality. But now, as Mr. Chen Jining said, China is now promoting the green consumption to change the people's lifestyle, move towards to the more clean, more saving the energy, saving the resources, so something like that. So Chinese government also formulated some policies and guidelines to guide the people towards to the the green consumption, especially the green procurement and the green the product chain, so something like that. Also have the green education in the school to educate the people in the behavior of the green behavior, so something like that. So I believe that in the future, with the development of technology, people also create new technology to reduce the waste from the consumption. So that's I would like to add at some point. Thank you.
Just a last thought from my end. I think, again, leadership from China, incredible. The Green Consumer Plan that was announced 4 or 6 weeks ago, which aims at 1 billion consumers. Can you imagine 1 billion consumers? That's 1/7 of the Earth's population, and China has a plan. I also wanted to mention that the SDGs, and SDG 12 in particular, is on sustainable production and consumption. The SDGs are universal. They apply to all countries, and there's very interesting language with developed countries in the lead on SDG 12. So I think when it comes to sustainable consumption and production, we see leadership from China already, and now we need to see leadership from around the world. Thanks.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question, if one further question exists. Failing which, I will take this moment to again thank our panelists, Dr. Yu, Fulai, Stephen. Thank you very much for being here, and we will see you the next time around. Thank you all, colleagues.